And we are live. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the stream. Hopefully, we'll get a few people trickling in as this stream continues. A couple of guys coming in already. Good to see you. If you're watching this on the replay, welcome. Thanks for tuning in. And if I look horrendous, it's because I was on the red eye last night from Miami, flying into London town, which is where I am now, and pretty tired. Pretty tired. I'm not going to lie, but I've got to stay awake because I've got to ensure that I push through the jet lag and I reaccustamize myself to United Kingdom time. So what that means is I've got to push through today, stay awake. And I thought I'd jump on a stream because it's been a little while since I've done a solo stream. And so I thought it would be a good opportunity to do one, partly to hopefully keep me awake. If I do fall asleep during the course of the stream, massive apologies, but I don't think I will. And yeah, I wanted to come on and just sort of have a chat, have a bit of a catch up, talk a little bit about my recent travels and all the good times that we have been having over in the United States and over in Latin America, South America, and also talk about a vexing question which has been directed to me by a reader. Which is really about what the title of this stream is about, which is it possible to be happy without being in a loving relationship? And I'm going to, this guy, kind of an anonymous guy, he reached out to me via DM and he sent a message and he was basically talking about relationships and asking me my thoughts. So I thought it would make a quite good subject matter for this stream. So I'm going to go into that in a moment. But yeah, just to say, I just spent the last, few weeks, really, a couple of weeks in firstly Mexico and then into Colombia. I was in Colombia for a couple of days. So basically what happened was we did a boot camp event in Mexico. So I was there with Mr. M, with Mete over the New Year period. And we were teaching a bunch of guys in Playa del Carmen and Tulum, which was a lot of fun, very tiring, but and quite stressful at times, but a lot of fun nonetheless. So we did that. That was really awesome. And then I had a few days sort of holiday, kind of chilling out in Playa del Carmen in Mexico. And then I was going to come back to London via Miami. But instead, because the guys were over in Bogota in Colombia, I thought, do you know what? It's only a few hours away by plane. I may as well get a flight, go to Bogota, catch up with the guys for a couple of days, which is exactly what I did. So I went over to Bogota, Colombia, never been there before, checked into the same hotel where James was staying. And yeah, it was awesome. It was really a lot of fun. I mean, I booked then to come back to London, which obviously I have now done. But I do, in some ways, wish I could have stayed longer. It was a really, really cool place, really interesting experience. I mean, you can see the disparities in terms of poverty, in terms of wealth in a place like Bogota, which has got some really nice high-end kind of venues. The hotel that we were staying in was really, really nice. Some really cool bars, really cool restaurants. I put on my Instagram stories this Italian restaurant that we went to, and they were cooking pasta in front of us. It was really, really cool. But equally, you've got this underground, very sort of impoverished, very violent underside as well. And we went into the red light district in Santa Fe one afternoon, which was a really, really interesting experience, which we'll talk about probably in more detail somewhere else. But yeah, taking the taxi into Santa Fe. And if you look on YouTube, there are sort of no-go zone type documentaries about Santa Fe. It's a very notorious red light sort of criminal area. And we took a taxi into Santa Fe, and we were in the taxi, and James, as we're pulling out of the nice areas in the center of Bogota, and we're getting further and further into, you know, this somewhat dodgy looking part of the town. And James said, it's looking a lot more dangerous around here, which is good. And of course it was good, because that's what we were looking for. We were looking for something authentic. We were looking for something gritty. We were looking for something raw, a la Fight Club, you know, fed up with the superficiality, the cosseted sort of, you know, fluffy life that we all lead. We wanted something raw. We wanted something authentic. And so going into Santa Fe was fantastic. It was a lot of, it was a really interesting experience. But as I say, if you look on YouTube, there's loads of documentaries about how it's, this kind of no-go zone. And it was pretty tasty, to be honest. It felt pretty rough and ready. We had a wander around. We had a look at a few places before, fortunately, still alive, getting a taxi back and coming back to civilization and going to a fancy restaurant in the center of the city. But it was really interesting. And I know that Tusk is keen to do more of the sort of danger travel type thing, where you're going to these kind of riskier areas. And I'm really keen on that as well. I mean, you've got to have your wits about you. Obviously, there's an element of, well, as it says on the tin, there's an element of risk. But, I like to see life in its rawest form. I like to see, I don't like to see this sort of sanitized version. I like to see the reality of life. And you certainly see it in those kinds of areas in these cities. So that was a really interesting experience. And then that was sort of the day before. And then I basically the next day got myself ready, flew over to Miami, stayed in a hotel in Miami for the night, and then got the plane back to London. And that was it. So I've been traveling really for the last 2 days, pretty tired. Hence, I probably look really tired, etc., etc. But I wanted to jump on and have a chat with you guys. Any questions that you've got on travel, on dating, any of these things, relationships we're going to be talking about in a second, put them into the chat. Michael says, absolutely. Indeed, absolutely. Freddie says, why did you take the 10 Times Happiness book off of Amazon? I don't know, really. I've got a bit fed up with it, really, to be honest. I didn't think it was really... I just didn't really think that it fitted with the stuff that I'm currently doing, so I took it off. There it is. So, on to the topic of today's stream. And by the way, if you have topics that you would like me to cover in other videos or in other streams, then do let me know. You can put it into the comments here, or you can send me an email, troy@realtroyfrancis.com, or you can just leave a comment in the underneath the video. I'll see if I can get to it. But somebody, anyway, messaged me, and I'm not going to say his name. In fact, I don't even know his actual name. So it's completely anonymous. But I thought the question was interesting. He said, I've been watching your videos about relationships, their meaning, and I relate completely. And I think he's talking about some of these to-camera videos that I was doing when I'm talking about breakups and, the more negative aspects of relationships and stuff recently. And he said, I completely relate. In my case, it's even worse. Nothing gives me true joy but love. Not dating, not playing music, not fitness, not reading. Only something unstable and uncertain as love. Even food has become tasteless. No matter how much I focus on myself, I feel completely empty and meaningless without a strong bond and intimacy. Do you manage to be happy despite of this? How do you do that? So he sends me, I don't know this guy at all, and he just sends me this thing off the bat, and I'm reading it. I'm in Colombia, I think, when I received this, and I'm reading it, and I'm just thinking, well, firstly, what can I say? Really, I mean, people, obviously, one puts oneself into this position of making videos, creating content, talking about relationships, talking about dating, and it is something that I study. And I am fascinated with the human condition. I'm fascinated by the ways in which men and women and everybody really interrelates, the way that they come together, how attraction works, how seduction works, but also how in a wider sense, how relationships work, how we interrelate, how we bond, what attracts us, what repels us, and all of these different things. So I am hugely interested in all of this stuff. But at the same time, I can't claim to be an expert. I mean, I'm certainly somebody with an opinion, and I'm certainly somebody with a lot of life experience. I'm in my 40s, late 40s. And I'm also certainly somebody who, having coached and worked with a large number of other guys, I've also got that insight as well. This is a subject area, if you like, that we are studying all the time because, we're teaching students. So then myself and Tusk and Mr. Am and John MLD and whoever else it is that I'm working with, obviously we'll discuss the issues that they're going through. We'll discuss the issues that we're going through, and we'll get this kind of holistic view. So it's certainly an area that I am actively involved with. But can I claim to be an expert? Well, who really can claim to be an expert? We're all works in progress. Life is ongoing for all of us. We have positive experiences, we have negative experiences. You have situations where somebody, maybe a content creator or a guru, thinks they've got it all figured out, and then everything goes tits up and they realize actually they haven't, and they have to go back to the drawing board again. And I have friends where that's happened quite recently to them. I have friends who have a great reputation for being knowledgeable about human relations, and then something goes wrong in their own life and they have to reappraise everything. And that's certainly been the case with me. As John MLD said recently in a post on Instagram, I don't walk in front of you, I don't walk behind you, I walk alongside you, right? I don't pretend to be somebody who's got it all figured out. And I don't, but equally, I'm also somebody with experience. So I do have something to contribute. But, we're all fallible, we're all human beings, we're all working this out as we go along. And anybody who tries to give the impression that they have it all worked out is really lying, or at least maybe they're kidding themselves, but they're not being entirely truthful. But anyway, with all of that being said, this rang a number of alarm bells for me. And look, let's first off, let's just discard all of the red pill nonsense. I'm not coming at this from a sort of hardcore, like, oh my God, man, just spin plates kind of vibe. It's not like that. It's just that, well, let's go through it again. Nothing gives me true joy but love. And then he says, not dating. So he's sort of creating this distinction between saying, oh, not casual dating, it's love. Love is the only thing that brings him true joy. Now, my problem with this immediately off the bat is that there are a lot of quite fluffy, sort of nebulous terms being used here. What is true joy? What is true joy? Do we ever experience true joy? When do we experience it? I suppose we do experience it, but for how long, right? It's, for me, joy, if I would ever characterize myself as having experienced joy, which I suppose, there are moments in my life I would, I guess, describe as joyful, but they're fleeting moments, right? They're not moments, they're not long sort of expanses of time. So joy is a very ephemeral, fleeting thing for a start. We need to recognize that. And then he says, and he's talking about love. Well, what is love? What really is love? And I think that this is the crux of this whole episode, I guess, is to maybe consider that a little bit. What actually is love? What constitutes love? But the case that he's making is that it's only this sort of like love, this real love, that gives him pure joy. So he doesn't get it from dating. He doesn't get it from playing music. He doesn't get it from fitness or reading. So I think here he's pushing back against the received wisdom that we have in the men's online space, if you like, of like, hey man, just be your own mental point of origin and lift and read and work on yourself and all of that kind of stuff. He's sort of pushing back against those cliches, and he's saying those things don't really, I suppose he's sort of saying underneath it all, I know that I should be happy because I'm doing fitness or because I'm playing music or because I'm reading. I'm doing all these things that you guys tell me to do, but they don't really make me happy. The thing that really makes me happy is true love. He says, even food has become tasteless. Well, maybe he's got corona, because that is a symptom, isn't it? But yeah, so he's sort of pushing back against this notion that we promulgate, which is that you should be your own point of origin. You should focus on these other things. He says, no matter how much I focus on myself, I feel completely empty and meaningless without a strong bond and intimacy. Which again, I hope is ringing some alarm bells here for you guys, because what do these terms really mean? We say stuff like this all the time, don't we? And people in the wider culture will use these terms. We have a strong bond, intimacy. But what do those things really, really mean? And what does love really mean? When you analyze it, when you come down to it, and what does joy mean? And of course, we all would aspire, I'm sure, to feel joy. I mean, it would be great if I could feel joy the whole time, but that's not practical, is it? That's not reality. I mean, joy, as I've said, is very ephemeral. It's a very fleeting, quickly passing emotion. You can't expect to have a life that is entirely joyful. I don't think. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there are people out there who are living these entirely joyful lives, and I've just got it all wrong, and I'm just sitting in a room with black curtains, and I'm a miserable sod, which is, there's probably some truth in that as well. But I don't believe, from everything I've seen and everything I have observed, that anybody really is living a life of pure, unalloyed joy the whole time. Most people, I think, have moments of joy. They have moments of happiness. They have moments of great pleasure and excitement and wonder at the manifold beauties of the world. But then something punctures that, or just the mundanity of life punctures that, and they go back to a sort of an equilibrium. And I think everybody's really sort of, most people you meet are kind of going along somewhere like that. They're not hugely joyful, they're not hugely depressed, they're sort of just somewhere in the middle, and they're getting on with the different aspects of their life. And that, by the way, is the case whether this is somebody who's very rich and very wealthy, or somebody who's less rich and less wealthy, somebody who's just existing. I think we always just find an equilibrium, I think, regardless of our sort of socioeconomic position in society. But, so love for me is, and I've talked about this in some of these recent videos that I've been doing, these solo videos I've been doing. Is love a real thing? Yes, absolutely. I think it is a real thing. Have I experienced it? Yes, 100%, absolutely. Has it given me joy? At times, probably yes. But again, not again in fleeting moments, not as a sort of for an extended period of time. Intimacy. I have a real problem with the word intimacy because I don't really know what it means. I mean, of course, I know what it means intellectually, but I don't really know what it means experientially. I know what it's supposed to mean, I think. I know what it's supposed to mean. It's supposed to mean that you are, you're with somebody, maybe you're snuggled up with them physically, and it's almost like you're sharing you're sharing something on a soul level. It's almost like you become one person. Everything that your thoughts are her thoughts are your thoughts. It's that kind of thing. And I'm not sure that I've ever fully experienced that. And I'm not saying this is a sort of cry for help. Oh my God, I'm not sure I've ever experienced intimacy. But I'm not sure that I've ever fully experienced that. And the reason why is this. It's because people are, it's going to be obvious to say, people are individuals. Okay? You are an individual. Your partner, she is an individual. And you are separate entities. And however close you may feel, however you may understand one another, however you may aspire to get into her head and she into yours and everything like that, you are still separate entities. And I don't believe most of the time that people share everything. I just don't. I think that there's always a part of you that is hidden. I think there's always a part of her that is hidden, that is private, that is within her, and it isn't shared. And, again, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is just me. Maybe everybody else is experiencing this differently, but I don't know. I don't know. I have had moments of great intimacy, in inverted commas, with women that I have been involved with. I felt great intimacy, and I have lost that intimacy this last year with somebody that I loved. And that's been something that's been very painful for me. It's been quite traumatic for me. And it's something that I've had to work through, and I continue to work through. So I have experienced that intimacy. I have experienced intimacy of a kind. But even then, I don't think intimacy is I think it's something that you can get close to. I think it's something you can edge towards, but I don't think it's something that you can ever entirely achieve. It's like trying to achieve Zen, or it's like trying to achieve um, ultimate serenity. It's something that we all would like to achieve. It's something we would like to aspire to, but I don't know that we ever do, because there's always a division between us as individuals. You know, you could be laying in bed with one another, you could be naked, you could be holding one another, you know, you could be telling one another that you love each other, but secretly, what's going on in your head, what's going on in her head? Are you really that aligned? Is she really thinking of nothing else other than the thoughts that you are sharing with her? Or is she maybe thinking, and again, I don't want to go into it like hypergamy and all that stuff, but is she maybe thinking, you know what, actually, is this really the guy that I want to be with long term? Is this really where I want to be? Maybe you're secretly thinking, well, I love her and she's amazing, and I don't want to lose her, but is this really where I want my life to be at the moment? Are you actually sharing those thoughts with one another? Are you actually in that moment of intimacy with your girl, when you're there like this in bed and you guys are naked and, you know, you've just had sex and you've just made love and, you know, it's all wonderful, and are you really going to share with her that secret inner thought of, well, this is great, but, you know, there's part of me that just wants that freedom. There's part of me that just wants to, you know, maybe I just want to get on a plane and go to Brazil. I mean, are you really going to share that with her? You're not, are you? Because you don't want to spoil the moment. And she's not going to share whatever she's thinking. She might be thinking something like, oh, this guy's great. I love him. I get this. I feel so great when I'm with him. But really, you know, I kind of want to settle down, and I'm not sure this guy wants to settle down. And, you know, like in a couple of years' time, I want to have kids and I want to have a home. And I don't know if this is this really the right guy for that? Is she going to share that with you in that moment? Probably not, because she doesn't want to spoil the moment either. So where is this intimacy? How real is this intimacy that we feel? And again, you know, the caveat to all of this is I could be an outlier. I probably am an outlier. I probably am somebody who, you know, I find it quite difficult to open up. Maybe people find it difficult to open up with me. Maybe other people are experiencing this differently. But in my experience of this, I just question whether intimacy is ever complete, whether it's ever this full thing. Because I think that we all have our own internal dialogue going on. And do we share all of that with the people around us, even the people closest to us? No, of course we don't. You know, what if you've got an elderly relative and you love them, you love that relative, but sometimes you just wish they'd shut up. Sometimes you wish they'd just stop talking, you know? But you're not going to say that, are you? You're not going to tell your father that. You're not going to tell your grandmother that. You know, you're not going to say, oh, just shut up. I wish you'd stop talking. So we never really share entirely of ourselves. And so this, again, it goes against this argument that intimacy, this notion of intimacy. And then he talks about a strong bond in a relationship. Well, yeah, I mean, you know, again, I have experienced a strong bond with women that I have been in relationships with. I had a very strong bond with somebody that I was with until last year. And then we came apart, and that bond was, you know, really, it was untied, or whatever you want to say. Again, I mean, the problem that I have with strong bond is, again, it's not an absolute, is it? Because a bond can be strong, and a bond is strong in the moment, right? You know, on that Sunday afternoon, you've just been out for a walk, you've come back, one of you's cooked dinner, you've watched something on TV, you've gone to bed, you've had sex, you're laying in one another's arms, you're thinking, oh, this is so great, this is so perfect. And you feel that bond. You feel what we call in language a bond. But it's only for that moment, isn't it? You know, because those other thoughts that we talked about before, those other thoughts that are contaminating the intimacy going on in the back of your head. But is she really the one? You know, is this really the right time for me to settle down? Is there somebody else out there? You know, what about if I did like those guys on the internet and went over to Colombia and, you know, ran around and had a great time, you know. You're thinking that, and she's thinking, yeah, but this is really the best guy I could get, and blah blah blah. So you might have that bond in the moment, but again, it's not something that exists forever. It's not an end state. And the problem with the way that he's characterizing this stuff is, you know, the only thing that's going to give him joy, which we've already said is a sort of a somewhat nebulous concept anyway, is this thing called love. And he needs to have, his life is meaningless without a strong bond and intimacy. But in my view, a strong bond and intimacy are both slippery concepts, let's say. And they're certainly temporarily inhibited concepts, I would say. I think that you can have them for a while. I don't think they really exist forever. I mean, for some people they do, you know, and you get the old couple who've been together for 50 years and, you know, they die with hand in hand and all of that, which is very lovely. But in a lot of cases, unfortunately, these things don't last forever. And, you know, it comes back to the age-old wisdom, really, which is recognizing that things don't last forever. You know, nothing lasts forever. I mean, maybe a few things do last forever, but in the main, things don't last forever. You know, people die, people break up. There is illness, there is poverty, there is all manner of things. People fall out of love. People just get bored with one another. This is the problem. You know, this is the problem, and this is the problem, by the way, with long-term monogamy. A lot of people in the men's space bang on about hypergamy the whole time. It's like, hey, hypergamy, look at these women trading, or bloody hell. And, you know, that all of that is doubtless there's truth in that. But the truth, the reality, the broader reality here is that we all get bored, unfortunately. Because I believe that human beings want two things at the same time. We want security. We want that person to call at the end of the day. We want that person to answer our WhatsApp messages. We want that person to snuggle up with and watch Netflix with. But we also want variety at the same time. We want a bit of strange. We want to be able to go out and, you know, meet other people usually in a sexual context, and get our rocks off. And I think we all, men and women, want the two things at the same time, and they're not compatible. You know, we've got a big problem societally with monogamy, and the way that monogamy is still deigned to be the central, you know, the central edifice on which everything else rests, and it's enshrined in law. And this is why there's all this problem with marriage, and people go on about the marriage laws and all that stuff. You know, because you're putting all of that legal weight on top of something that is actually very, very fallible and can crumble very easily, you know, monogamy, because people get bored. People get bored with one another, you know. Nothing lasts forever. And, you know, and this is why something like Buddhism is a more helpful way maybe of viewing the world. You know, this just an acceptance is key. You know, they say that in 12-step recovery groups when people are recovering from alcoholism. Acceptance is the key. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. You know, accept the things we can't change. But we have to accept life on life's terms, you know? And the problem with this guy, and I said this to him when I responded, or I said a couple of things, but one of the things I said when I responded was that the bigger difficulty with all of this is that if you're basing your happiness or your joy on another human being, and human beings are inherently fallible, and I don't believe that it's ever a good idea to base your entire happiness on another human being, whatever your relationship to that person is, whether it's a girlfriend, whether it's a wife, whether it's your mother or father or sibling or a friend or whatever. I don't believe, and it's not that I'm saying you shouldn't love people. It's not that I'm saying you shouldn't trust people. It's not that I'm saying you shouldn't form close relationships with people. And I'm not being nihilistic here. I'm just saying that I don't believe that it is a good life strategy to base your sense of wellness, your sense of wholeness as a person on another human being, because human beings are inherently fallible. Human beings are inherently flawed. You know, we all know that, you know, there's no surprise. It's no amazing revelation, right? Human beings are inherently fallible, and it's just stupid to base your happiness. So yes, you could be happy to be with somebody. You know, you can be in a relationship with this great girl and you can think, yeah, this is amazing. I just love being with her. I have such a great time with her. But you can't base all of your happiness on that person, because who knows what's going to happen, right? She may cheat. She may decide to leave you. She may, you know, get a job offer and have to move cities and you can't move. All manner, you know, she might die. All manner of things could happen. So if you're basing your sense of joy or your sense of wellness on yourself, on that other person, that's a bad strategy. You need to have something else. Now, in 12-step recovery from addiction, because addiction, in the view of people who adhere to a 12-step program, addiction is a spiritual malaise. You know, it's this spiritual lack in the center of your soul, the hole in the soul, the God-shaped hole, if you like. You are advised to seek a higher power. You're advised to seek a spiritual entity not to base your happiness on, but it's better to find something spiritual rather than something that is flawed like another human being. Now, I'm not going to this isn't going to be a God pill live stream, so don't worry. I mean, but if not something spiritual, if you don't believe in any of this stuff, and you don't have to be religious, by the way, but if you don't choose to, you know, to go down that road with me here, then at least you've got to find something within yourself to believe in. You've got to find within yourself the thing that's going to make you whole, the thing that's going to make you feel secure, because you can't base it on somebody else. And the problem with this is that, you know, what he's basically saying, the only way that I can feel joy, think about it. He's saying even food is tasteless unless he has a strong bond and intimacy. I mean, what a terrible thing. Even food is tasteless to this guy unless he has somebody else there. Well, that's a very, very bad place to be, I'm afraid, for anybody. All right? Because as I said, your girlfriend could leave you. Your girlfriend could walk out the house and get run over by a car. She could get struck by lightning. You know, she could go off with somebody else. And then what are you going to do? You know, it's just a very, very bad life strategy. I think it's quite a naive way of looking at life as well. Because as I say, and then even when you do find that amazing girl, even when you do find that amazing partner and you guys are really happy together and you're having a great time, it doesn't, in my experience, it doesn't take away from everything else. You know, you can feel good when you're cuddled up and you're watching TV and you're, you know, whispering sweet nothings to one another. Yes, you can feel good, but for me, relationships have always felt a bit like a ticking time bomb, to be honest. And the reason for that is because, yes, you know, they create good feelings. Yes, it's pleasant to love and to feel loved by somebody else, for sure. But you should always be aware that can evaporate at any moment. That can be taken away from you at any moment. And I've always been very aware of that. I've always been very aware that these things are temporary. And so in some ways, when I've been in a relationship, I actually feel almost more stress than when I'm not in a relationship, because I always have this feeling, well, this is nice at the moment, but it could end at any time. And then what am I going to do? You know, and maybe that's the somewhat addictive sort of side to my nature, because it's a little bit like if you take a drug and you're feeling really good on that drug, but at the same time, in the back of your head, there's that feeling of like, oh, this is great, but what happens when I come down? Or if you're drinking and you're feeling good, you're feeling that buzz with the alcohol, but then you're looking at the company thinking, shit, but I've only got half a bottle of wine left. What am I going to do when that runs out? So perhaps the awareness of the impending come down is a somewhat addictive way of looking at things. But I've always been very acutely aware of it. And so relationships to me, yeah, I mean, they've been great, they've been nice, but they haven't felt like a safety haven because I've always been conscious that this can end, that I can be left high and dry. Again, maybe that's just me. I don't know. I'm just a miserable sod. But but the fact remains that it can be taken away from you at any time. And if it doesn't get taken away from you at any time, then it might get a bit boring. And that's another problem. Because you feel security, but you're a bit bored. You feel secure. You feel like, this is great. I know I go home, watch TV, get a dinner on the table, blah, blah, blah. But it's a bit fucking boring. I wish I could go to Colombia with those jokers and, charge around and, have a bit of strange. So we're stuck in this sort of dichotomous world where the thing that we all want, which is security, is also stifling and also becomes somewhat dulling to us as well. And even worse, we can't be sure that those good, nice, warm, fluffy feelings of security that we enjoy whilst being within that relationship are actually going to last for a long time, to last in the long term anyway. And what's the good of it if it's not going to last long term? What's the good of being in this relationship with this woman that you love so dearly and she's so close to you and she's the only thing that makes you feel joy, she's the only thing that makes you feel happiness, when at any time she can say, do you know what, actually, Troy, I reckon I can find someone better, so see you later. Or you could say that to her or whatever. Like, as I say, these things are impermanent. So I then said to the guy, after he put these points to me, saying that, he asked me, how do you manage to be happy despite this? I suppose he meant because he knows or is aware that I'm not in a relationship at the moment. He's kind of saying, so how do you manage to be happy in spite of maybe not having this relationship with a strong bond and intimacy? And I then went back and I said, well, strong bond and an intimacy are an illusion. It's a little bit nihilistic, but and I said, as is happy. And he says, well, that's interesting. Recognizing this brings you calmness. So he's saying, because I understand that these things are a fallacy, that brings me calmness. This is what he's saying. Well, for him, that words don't calm his impossible desire. Understanding these things, it doesn't calm what he needs. It doesn't calm his desire. And then I went back and I said, well, what is calmness? I'm not always calm. I'm not happy most of the time. MLD. I'm not happy most of the time. I am not calm a lot of the time. What do these things mean? He's ascribing this idea to me. He's ascribing this notion that because I have somehow philosophically understood the crux of this issue, that has brought me some sort of, it's put me on this stoic cloud where I'm just existing and like being like, oh yeah, okay, I get it also, so I'm cool with it. Well, I'm not fucking cool with it. Of course I'm not fucking cool with it. I'm not happy. I'm not all the time. I'm not calm. I'm not content the whole time. Of course I'm not. I have a view of the world. Now, it's a view of the world that, as MLD says, might be miserable, or it might be realistic. I don't know. I think it's pretty realistic, but I have a view of the world based on my observations and my experience on this planet over the last 40 odd years or whatever, and seeing what's happened to other people and friends and, et cetera, et cetera. So I have a view of these things, and it's a fairly cynical view, perhaps, but don't be under the misapprehension that that view makes me happy, that view somehow gives me contentment, because it doesn't. Of course it doesn't, because I also want the things that you want. I also want the things that everyone else wants. I want the intimacy. I want the strong bond. I want the loving relation, all of that stuff. Of course I want that stuff. And not having it doesn't, at this particular moment in time, I should stress, it's not that I'm sitting here with some sort of like, I don't know, wisdom, if you want to call it that, doesn't bring contentment necessarily with it, right? I'm just trying to be honest here, guys. Really, I'm just trying to be honest about how I feel about this stuff. But then, as I said before, I don't think that happiness, I don't believe, is a constant state anyway. Happiness, I don't believe, is a plateau that you can step onto and you can just exist there for a long period of time. And whether you're in a relationship, I said on Twitter jokingly the other day, somebody said, I was talking about like having a girlfriend versus not having a girlfriend. And I said, it's okay because I'm equally miserable if I have a girlfriend or if I don't have a girlfriend. Now, obviously that was kind of a joke, but there is a grain of truth in that, because, and I have friends who are married. I have friends with families. I have friends who are divorced. I have friends, all kinds of areas of the spectrum. And really, honestly, in my observation, most people are kind of just getting on with life. I don't see one group of people who are ecstatically happy and joyful. It's not like the married people with kids are ecstatically joyful and they're like, oh, this is amazing. And then the single people are all miserable, or the divorced people are all miserable. The truth of the matter is that most people are somewhere kind of in the middle, or sort of not, I don't want to say bumping along the bottom because that's a bit negative, but most people are just somewhere in the middle. Everyone's got problems of different kinds. The problems of the young family are going to be different from the problems of the aging degenerate bachelor. The problems of the person in a relationship that's been going on for 10 years are going to be different from the challenges faced by a newish married couple. But whatever you choose to do, I don't think that there's this sort of, I don't believe that there is this nirvana of happiness that exists if you just do this or that particular thing. If you get married, if you have a kid, if you move in together, whatever. I mean, I think that whatever decision you make is going to bring ups and downs. It's going to bring good things and bad things. So Dr. Pam is spamming the chat with a load of nonsense, which I haven't actually read. Happiness is never the goal. Indeed. Well, I'm not arguing that happiness is the goal, because I don't think that, as I've said, I don't think happiness is, I think happiness is fleeting. I think happiness and joy come along and they land for a little while and then they go away again. I don't think that we can ever reach a plateau of happiness and just exist there forever. I don't think that's possible, regardless of what you do. Being cynical and jaded is a means to protect yourself, a barrier from risk of emotional pain. Maybe, but whether you're cynical or not, emotional pain exists. You just have to get out of bed and look around you, really, don't you? the consumerism-driven Western world has deceived most people into thinking they always need to be happy via sex and material goods. Yeah, I agree with that. I think it has. You're not making a good case for being happy without a loving relationship. Well, I don't know if that's really the case that I'm trying to make, really. I think the case that I'm trying to make is that whatever situation you're in as regards a relationship is going to bring its own problems. It's going to bring its own concerns. Now, the caveat to that is that the first 3 months to a year to 2 years of relationship are fucking great. You know, the first couple of months, the first few months of relationship, the first year of relationship, first 2 years of relationship, absolutely fantastic. There's no doubt about it. That is when I'm at my happiest, if you like. When I'm in what they call the honeymoon period, because the honeymoon period of a relationship is fucking awesome. And this is why, ladies and gentlemen, this is why a lot of people become serial monogamists. A lot of people flip from partner to partner, and they do about 2 years here, they do a year here, 18 months there, and then they move on to the next one. Because we like the bit at the beginning. Because the bit at the beginning is really, really good. But the bit at the beginning is also not really reality. I mean, it is reality, but when the first flames of, you know, passion and love have sort of died down somewhat, and then you get to the real stuff, the real boring, mundane sort of, life stuff, then it gets more difficult. And that's why a lot of relationships break up in the first 2 or 3 years. FA9082, you can't have a happy life without kids. The purpose of life is to have children and make them better than you were. That is the most fulfilling thing in life. Is that true? I don't know. What do you think? What do you people think? You can't have a happy life without kids. Is that true? You can certainly have an unhappy life with kids. You can certainly have a very unhappy life with kids. Do you ever want a relationship? Again, if so, will it be monogamous? That seems to be the downfall of most. I don't know, man. You got to take these things a day at a time. As cynical as I may appear to be on these streams, I also feel in a way that I lost, through my own fault, the person that I've been closest with in my entire life. And this is a very blue pill thing to say, but I'll say it anyway. I feel like I lost the love of my life. And so, and I don't know if I'm using this as an excuse. And maybe I'll probably, I'm sure my view will change, as time goes on. But at the moment, it's not that I don't want a relationship. It's just that anything would feel inferior to the relationship that I had before. And I know, it's like, one-itis and, just fuck 10 other women and blah, blah, blah. Well, guess what? It doesn't really work. It doesn't really work. You can travel around Russia and you can sleep with other women and you can, whatever. It doesn't really work. And I've said this before in different videos because, yeah, sex is great and everything, but the real, the chemistry that you get between certain people, between you and certain people, is a very powerful thing, and I think it's a real thing. And this is why I said at the beginning, I think love is real. I don't think love is not real. I think love is absolutely real. And I don't know. I mean, you get to a certain point, you get to my age, and you sort of think, well, in many ways, maybe that was it. Maybe that was it. And yeah, sure. There's 7 billion. There's nearly 10 billion people on the planet. There are other women out there. There are other women better. Blah, 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 blah. Whatever. But I think, I don't know. I think you just get a bit sort of jaded after a while. I think that I feel like there was a real sea change after that relationship, because that relationship, I think, was, for all of its faults, and most of them were caused by me. I think that relationship was real. I think it was love, and you know, it probably had to end, and it did end. And I deal with the consequences of that every day, and I don't feel really any appetite to just go and try and find somebody, go and find somebody else. Really, I just don't really have that appetite at the moment. Now, that's not to say that won't change, but yeah. As John MLD says, there are special women out there in life that you can't replace. And again, it probably sounds like we're kind of going against the narrative here, aren't we? In a way, we're kind of going against the red pill narrative here, because there'll be plenty of people, and I'm sure there'll be people afterwards in the comments like, bloody blue pillars, fucking one-itis, you just need to go and live in Brazil and have sex with 1,500 women, and you'll be all right. But I don't think that's the case. I just genuinely don't think that's the case. Now, that is not to be blind to the faults of women. That's not to be blind to the faults of men. I think we're all flawed, right? And certainly women have their faults. And yes, of course, statistically, there are billions of people on the planet. You can meet other people. You can be happy with somebody else. But I think that what John says there is right. I am the narrative. I think what John says is right. I think there are special women out there that you just can't replace. I just think that's true. Glory says, I feel that lost the love of my life partner. Oh God. Matt says, it's true, without kids and Jesus, life is meaningless and full of despair. So it's not just kids. You've got to have Jesus in there as well. Otherwise, you're totally screwed. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that. Dr. Pam says, I have an unhappy life with kids. I mean, look, come on, guys. It's completely obvious. I mean, let's not be under the illusion that just having kids is going to make you happy, because clearly it's not. Come on, guys, let's not be stupid about this. Yes, I can understand the notion that having children, it connects you with the genetic timeline, So yes, of course, without question, it's going to give you a sense of purpose because you've got this young, child, and you've got to look after them, and it gives your life new meaning, all of that stuff. Yeah, obviously it makes sense. But let's not be under any illusion. Unless you are John MLD and you've got a shitload of money in crypto and probably liquid as well, and, you can afford to do it in some style. Raising children is very expensive. It's very difficult. It's emotionally and psychologically difficult, and it isn't in itself necessarily going to make you happy. And I mean, I've talked to many, many, many people about this. Friends of mine, close friends of mine, acquaintances of mine, people I've worked with, and the overall consensus is the same. Yes, having kids is a wonderful, life-affirming thing. You love that child. You feel love in a way that you've never felt love before. But does it inherently make you happy? No. Does it inherently give you any greater sense of your understanding of yourself as a human being? No, not really. So, and again, it's the problem really is with the use of this word happy, because what does happy really mean? You're not going to be happy if you've got to get up for work in the morning to go, you've got to go to the 9 to 5 with your ball-breaking boss who you can't escape with because you've got this kid. And the kid wakes you up every 3 hours, and then you've got to go to work get up for work at 6 a.m. You're not going to be happy, are you? It's kind of miserable, really. Of course, in a wider sense, you're going to be happy because you brought this new life into the world, and you feel this love for the child that, you've never experienced anything like it before, and you've never experienced anything like it again. You die for that child. So in that sense, yes, of course, it ascribes this greater meaning to your existence, but it's not really going to make you happy, is it? If you're living in Peckham in a high rise and you've got 3 kids screaming all night. So, let's disabuse ourselves of that notion. Kids aren't that expensive, Janus. I don't have kids because I can't afford to raise a child. I wanted kids, but I'm at peace. I will never have it. I mean, I don't really want this to be a big sort of thing about the meaning of one's life. But I mean, there are certainly people who have not had children who have made a very meaningful contribution to society. And equally, there are many, 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 many millions of people who have had children who have made absolutely no positive contribution to society whatsoever. So I don't think it's as straightforward as to say having kids good, not having kids bad, and kids in themselves don't make you happy, except in a sort of theoretical afterglow sense. When you're 70 and they've left home and you're sitting there thinking, oh, I didn't do a bad job, you might be sort of happy in a theoretical sense then, but it's not going to be happy except for fleeting moments, those fleeting moments of joy. But again, it connects back to the thing we've been saying all along the whole stream. Happiness is not an end state. Happiness is not a continuous state. It's a fleeting emotion. It's a fleeting spark that comes and goes. And to believe anything otherwise is just not true. Today, I get 9 p.m. Afnan fragrance clone of Ultra Male, €18 beast I have sent for club and bar. Congratulations. So yeah, that's about it really. On that cheerful note, unless anyone's got any further questions, don't beat yourself up, Troy. Everything happens for a reason. No, it doesn't. Not everything happens for a reason. The connection you had with that woman could easily be replicated even better. I did thank you for the sentiment. I appreciate it. I don't agree on 2 points. I don't agree that everything happens for a reason, because I think that life is ultimately random and sometimes cruel. And I don't believe that the connection that you had with that woman could be easily replicated and even better. I do accept that. I think in time, you can meet someone else and you can meet someone different and you can have a great experience with that person as well. But I don't think that you can it goes back to what John was saying. I don't think you can easily replicate a connection that you've had with somebody when it's a really good connection. And when you get to my age, and you've been through the ringer a few times, it does get to the point where you sort of think, well, do I even really? One of the problems with breakups that we don't talk about enough, or maybe people don't acknowledge, is that sometimes with a breakup, you actually don't want to get over it in a funny way. It's all very well for people to say, oh, you'll get over it, and just go and travel or shag 10 other women or, blah, blah, blah. And you'll get over it. But what if you don't even really want to get over it? And the reason you don't want to get over it is because you understand and you accept that there was something there that is irreplaceable and that shouldn't be replaced. And perhaps you don't want to replace it. Okay. And so it's not even the notion of, we'll just, go running every day and I don't know, go do this cognitive behavioral therapy and you can do this and that and you'll get over it. But maybe you don't fucking want to get over it, So there's a thought. Everything happens for a reason is just a comforting thought. Have you watched the First Man YouTube channel? No, I haven't, but I'll have a look. That sounds interesting. Relationships are determined by its parts. No individual replaces another. So no, to embrace another relationship right now won't help. Exactly. Well, that's what I said on a previous stream. But I didn't really want to make all this about me. I don't want to make this about my particular experience. I'm just reflecting stuff that's happened for me recently. But I mean the key issue here really was this guy's sort of question about whether you can find happiness without this intimacy. And what I ended up saying really was, I'm not always calm, I'm not always happy, but so what? Happiness is not an end state, as I've been saying here. And then I said, but then where do you go from that? Because his suggestion would probably be, well, if you, Troy, are not happy, then what you should do, Troy, is find intimacy again, or find a strong bond again with somebody else, and that's going to make you happy. But because I question whether intimacy truly exists in the way that we think it does, for reasons that I've explained further back in this video, I said to him, well, if I'm not happy, well, so what? It doesn't mean that intimacy is the solution. Perhaps there is no solution. And what I meant by that is perhaps there is no solution to that generalized feeling of discontent that we all have to some extent with life. Maybe there is no solution. We all look for solutions in different things. We look for solutions in relationships. We look for solutions in sex. We look for solutions in relations with another person. We look for it in drugs. We look for it in alcohol. We look for it in likes and subscriber counts on the internet. We look for it in money. We look for it in crack cocaine. We look for it in all of these different things. And none of those things really work. And maybe there isn't ultimately a solution. Maybe it is a question of dealing with this stuff the best that we can, one day at a time, until finally, we breathe our last breath and then we die. Maybe there is no solution. I don't mean that to sound, I know that sounds really negative and really nihilistic, and I don't mean it to, because you can still have a good time along the way. You can have a great laugh. I was just in Mexico and Colombia. I had a great laugh, great time. That doesn't take away from the existential void. It's just, but you can have a good time along the way, is what I'm saying. But maybe there is no ultimate solution, because I don't think that intimacy is the solution or love is the solution, because those things are fleeting and they're kind of flawed. So yeah, I'm saying there's no solution. But if there is a solution, it certainly doesn't exist in another human being, because other human beings are flawed and fallible and all the rest of it. And then he comes back and he says, well, that sucks. I think it'll take me some time to figure this out. I do believe that happiness or satisfaction, if it exists at all, is actually meant to be found in other human beings. And so he says that, and that's where I do differ with him, because I disagree with that. I don't think you can rely on other human beings to make you happy. I just don't think it works. I think it needs to be something else. And again, without going God pill on you, and I'm not going to go God pill, I think some sort of spiritual outlet, or at least some sort of like self-belief, is better than relying on another person, because you can never rely on another person totally. That's just the way it is. And that was it. And that was kind of got to the end of our correspondence. But to his overall point, is it possible to be happy without a relationship? I think it's possible to have a good time without being in a relationship. I think it's possible to have a good time being in a relationship. I think you will have problems and challenges and difficulties being out of a relationship, and I think you'll have problems, challenges, and difficulties being in a relationship. They're just of a different nature. So, what I'm saying is that we're never, well, if you're anything like me, we're never entirely happy, whatever the state of what's going on with our, relationship life. But ultimately, the answer that you're looking for is not to be found in that other human being. And what we want to work towards is to be feeling all right in ourselves, regardless of if we're in a relationship or not. It doesn't mean if she walks up and walks out and leaves you, then you're just like, oh, I don't care. I'm just so content being me. It's never as easy as that. But we want to work towards being all right with ourselves, because the hole inside of ourselves is not going to be filled by somebody else. It's just not. It just doesn't work. So anyway, and as Pam says, relying on another person to regulate your mood or provide happiness sounds dreadful. Exactly. What do you think about the book of The Power of Now? Yeah, I read it years ago. I don't really remember much of it, to be honest. I know I have a friend who's a big fan. And that's it, I think, really. So let's leave it there. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. If you've got any thoughts on this, do leave them in the comments below. If you are... well, if you enjoyed this, please do subscribe to the channel. Get on my free email list. There's a link below. And yeah, we'll catch up again very soon. Bye-bye.